first half of section 13.1, we're going to talk about the distance formula and we're going to graph circles. The reason we're going to do both is that they are, you'll see in a minute, they're very closely related. You may have already used the distance formula. The distance formula is taking, if you've got the distance between 2 points, you're going to take the difference between their x's and you're going to take the difference between their y's and you're going to square them and then add them together. And then take the square root of the whole thing. This comes from, if you want to derive it, it derives from the Pythagorean theorem and creating a right triangle and determining the distance by using the hypotenuse of the triangle. All right, if you want to look at that, I'll be happy to do that. You know I will. All right, so, and then the midpoint is, if I've got this point and this point, what is the middle point between them? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take the distance, we're going to add the two x's together and divide by 2, so that finds, that's the average of the middle point of the x's. And then we're going to take the y plus the y and divide that by 2, and that finds the average of the y's, and that gets us the midpoint between the 2 points. Let me show you how they work. All you have to do is know how to use the formula. What we're going to do is this. I'm going to give you 2 points, -3, 2, and 5, 6, and I want to know what is the distance between these 2 points and what is the midpoint between those 2 points. All you have to do is use the formula. So let's say, well, the distance between them is going to be the square root of the x minus x and the y minus y. Now, it really doesn't matter which point you use as the first one and the second one. I like to, as often as I can, keep things positive just because it's easier to work with positive numbers and not worry about did I mess up the negatives. But it really doesn't matter if you use the other point. What does matter is that you combine the x's and the y's. So let's look at the x's. Let's take 5 minus a -3 squared, because that's the formula, plus, now we're going to do the y's. And we started with the 5, so we started with this point. So for the y's, we have to start with this point. So 6 minus 2 quantity squared. Did you see where I got the 2 points? So I took first my x's, and I took 5 minus a -3. Then I took y's and took 6 minus 2. And now we're gonna subtract them and then square them. So 5 minus a -3 is 5 plus 3, which is 8 squared. And 6 minus 2 is 4 squared. And so we've got the square root of both of those. So now just multiply it out. 8 squared is 64. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. And if we add those together, the square root of 80 is our distance. Now remember, we're going to look to see, can any perfect squares come out of that, okay? You could put that into your formulator and get a calculator into your calculator and get a decimal, but I would like for you to keep it as a square root. Let's just keep it as simple as possible. What we're going to do to see if anything will come out is use your tree. 8 times 10 is 80, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 5 is 10. And I can see, oh, there's a set of 2's and another set of 2's, and the 5 is on its own. So 2 times 2 is 4, comes out of the box, and the square root of 5 stays in. So the distance between these 2 points is 4 square root of 5. All right? So there will be some in your homework that you'll end up with some square roots, and I want you to leave them as square roots, but simplify them as far as you can. All right. Now for the midpoint, we're simply going to use the midpoint formula. So we want to know, well, what's the middle point between these two? We're going to take the x's and add them together. And once again, it doesn't matter which is first and which is second. And because we're not subtracting, you can even mix up what order. Yeah, you can do the x and y in different order, but make sure you keep the x's together. So -3 plus 5, and you're going to divide that by 2 because that's the formula. And for the y part of your point, you're going to take 2 plus 6 and divide by 2. So 5, and actually I can flip it in my head. Instead of -3 plus 5, I can say 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 plus 6, 6, 7, 8. 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, so this is 8 over 2, which reduces down to 4. This is 2 over 2, which reduces down to 1. So the format that you're going to want your midpoint in is this, 1 comma 4 in parentheses, because the answer is a point on a graph. All right? So there's several in your homework that are like this. Give me the distance between the 2 points and the midpoint between the 2. Then the next section, I've got a couple of questions where I say, well, here's the center of your circle, and here's a point on the circle. I want to know what's the radius of the circle. And you might say, well, I don't know. What on earth are you talking about? Now you're talking about distance. Now all of a sudden you want radius. What are you talking about? Here's the deal. You know that a circle is made up of a point in the center, and then you go equal distance around that center, you make a circle. All right? So anywhere on that circle is going to be the same distance to the center as any other point on the circle. So if you've got the center and you have a point on the circle, so what we've got is we've got a circle and we know the center is at 4, 2, and a point on the circle is like here, 8, negative 1. If I want to know the radius, well, that's just the distance between those 2 points. So it's the same as the distance formula. All right? So we can call it R for radius. The radius equals the same thing, the square root of our x's. Now be careful, this is up and down instead of side to side. So you're going to take the x's, the 8 minus 4, quantity squared, plus the y's, negative 1 minus 2, quantity squared. Now be careful, look to see, I didn't say, oh, 2 is bigger, so I want to take 2 minus 1, because I had already, with my x's, I had already used this point first. So 8 minus 4, I have to start back with this point and do the y's first. So negative 1 minus 2 that way. So 8 minus 4 is 4 squared, plus negative 1 minus 2, because they're both negative, I'm actually going to add them and get negative 3. So negative 3 squared. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 16 plus 9 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. So your radius equals 5. Done. Okay? Now, when you did this, you actually derived the formula for a circle. All right? Here is the formula for the circle. You're going to want this in your notes. X minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals the radius squared. If you have this formula, the center of your circle is this h, k. Now be careful. The only tricky thing about this whole thing is that your h and your k are opposite of what they look like. Okay? So be careful about that. Just watch out. All right? And then the only difference between this and your distance formula is you've got a square root here, but here you're squared. So if you were to take the square root of both sides, we would end up with exactly the same thing as this distance formula. That's why we're doing it in the same section. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the next section is I'm going to say here are some equations of circles in standard form. I just want you to graph them. That's all you do. And you're saying, oh no, I don't want to graph it. It's okay. These are so easy and so fun. Check this out. The only things you need, the only parts you need to graph a circle are the center of the circle and the radius of the circle. That's all you need. And that is clearly defined in this formula. All right. So in this case, x minus 3 quantity squared plus y plus 2 quantity squared is 36. I know that the center of this circle is hk. And be careful, it's the opposite of what we see. So the opposite of negative is a positive 3. The opposite of a positive is a negative 2. All right, so don't forget it's going to be the opposite of what you see. That's the only hard part of this whole thing. All right, so then the radius of my circle is here, right? It equals 36. Now be careful because this is radius squared. All right, so in order to get the radius, I've got to take the square root of what you have here because this is the radius squared. So the radius is the square root of 36, which is just 6. All right. Now, these are going to be so cool and neat. If you've got graph paper, use the graph paper because it's so easy and quick and your circles will be so beautiful and round. I'm not a very good artist and I don't have graph paper, so I'm not sure how this is going to work out. So here we go. Oh, wait, I do. Check this out. Oh, I wasn't planning on using this. Let's see how it works. Okay, here we go. Except I don't want to rough up that marker. Let's get it. Here we go. Oh, I hope you can see it with this marker. So here we go. This is what we do. Step 1 is to graph your center. The center is 3, -2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, graph the center. Easy. Then the radius is 6. Well, the radius is going to go all directions. So what you need to do is you need to graph, oh, it's going to go off the edge, doggone it. All you're going to do is you're going to go all 4 directions. So start from the center, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plot a point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plot a point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plot a point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plot a point that's over there, doggone it. And then when you do your dot to dot on one that's gonna, oh, that's lovely. See, I told you I wasn't a very good artist, but there's your circle. Pretty cool, huh? Yay! All right. So yeah, if you've got graph paper, use graph paper. They'll make them nice and neat, and you can see easily that you got it correct. And that's it. See you soon.